I'm here with Jennifer May, the founder of the Fireweed Retreat and the author of Fireweed, her own personal memoir. And Jennifer, I just wanted to connect with you because I know that you have a personal story and a personal interest in women who place children for adoption. And tell us just a little bit about the retreat that you had recently. And this was a first annual retreat. So how did it go?
Yes. To begin with, this was our first year and we were so excited. And then COVID came in, and that was a huge bummer. But God, He showed up big and used what we thought was going to be a hindrance for His awesomeness. We were supposed to be in person at Beulah Beach, which is in Vermilion, Ohio, kind of north central Ohio. But again, because of COVID, we had to kind of change things up. So we went online, and I was thinking that we're not going to connect in the same way. And how is this going to look? And it ended up being that women from like Canada and New Zealand showed up. Women, like this one gal from New Zealand set her alarm for 1 in the morning so that she could be there. Like that wouldn't have happened if we had this in person. So we got to reach women that we never would have been able to had what these ashes had not come in and God used them for beauty.
Tell us why aftercare for birth mothers is important.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, the culture that we live in does not acknowledge the grief of women who placed for adoption. There's this incorrect connotation that if you choose to place your child for adoption, you don't get the right to grieve because somehow choice negates your grief, and that's not at all. I'm a birth mother myself. I've placed for adoption. I know there is lifelong grief with that. And when you don't have a support system coming alongside you to help you process those big emotions, it makes those waves of overwhelming grief even harder. Um, I don't want any woman choosing adoption to ever feel like she's alone, to ever feel like she doesn't get the right to grieve, whether she chose placement or not. If CPS came in and chose it for her, I don't ever want her to feel like she's alone, because she's certainly not.
What was the greatest success of your retreat?
I had a lot of women reach out to me afterwards to tell me how much that meant to them to have a Christ-centered retreat. And that was my whole purpose behind this is I've been to secular retreats before, not retreats, but like events. And I just went away feeling so emotionally and mentally drained, because it focuses on that trauma and the loss. And certainly trauma and loss have their place in adoption.
Mhm.
Um, but to me, I need the hope and the healing of Jesus. I personally am in a closed adoption. I don't know if I'll ever get the honor of meeting my child again, but my hope and my identity is not in me ever meeting my child. My hope and identity is rooted in Jesus. So my worth doesn't ebb and flow with me getting closer to my birth child. Um, I want that for every single woman. We shouldn't have to be stuck in our fresh wounds of placing for adoption when we have a heavenly Father that wants so much more for us.
Jennifer, just one last question for those of us that are unaware. How does it feel to place a child for adoption?
Um, there's a range of emotions. I can tell you now, being almost 17 years out, it's mostly joy, but there's a lot of grief still. Um, and I don't think that grief equates regret, because I don't regret placing my child, without going into the full story of what I've got going on, in my past. But I do not at all regret placing her. I just miss her because she's my child. It was my innate motherly drive to protect and love my child that brought me to the choice of adoption. But certainly when I was freshly out of placement, the first couple of years, it was hard and it was lonely. And if I'm being completely honest, I have placed a child for adoption and I have had a miscarriage. And I can tell you, because there was more of a support system with the miscarriage, that was a lot easier than it was with placing a child for adoption. Um, Having people come bring me meals when we lost our child, my husband and I, um, checking in, asking how I was doing. That was huge. And that didn't happen when I placed a child for adoption. Even though I had just lost a child, it just wasn't viewed the same way.
Mhm.
So having, um, support, would have been huge. And I want that for every single woman who comes through Spirit of Faith, to have that sort of support system. And any agency they go to, really, this should be just blanketed across our culture of women are supported.
I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of not only Spirit of Faith Adoptions, but every adoptive parent and every adoptee and every birth mother everywhere for doing what you're doing, for sharing your story, for reaching out and giving the voiceless a voice and a support and the courage to continue because their children want them to be happy and to be proud of their decision. You gave these children life, and their parents. And yes, it's absolutely true that it's done out of love and nothing else. And it's amazing we have to break our own hearts for loving somebody else so very much.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you so much for doing this. And we look forward to hearing what's going to happen next year. And I know you're already planning for that.
Yes.
So thank you again.
Absolutely.